out to the ball game. Take me out with the crowd. Buy me some peanuts and Cracker Jack. I don't care if I ever get back, so let's root for the home team. If they don't win, it's a shame. For it's 1, 2, 3 strikes, you're out at the old ball game.
Welcome to Let's Get To, the baseball show from the fans' perspective. Now here's your host, James Christopher. Let's Get To presents the first pitch. Opening thoughts from James Christopher.
And welcome to Let's Get To. I'm your host, James Christopher, and we have a busy show for you today. But I want to jump in to talk about something that to me honestly seems maybe a little redundant. Certainly something that doesn't need to be addressed with the severity that people address it. But I guess I'm obligated as someone who does a baseball show. And that is to talk about why I think Pete Rose does not belong in the Hall of Fame. It came up again like it does every year, and people want to know when is it time and when do you do it and all that stuff. And the fact is, for Pete Rose, I don't think the time is ever. Gambling is the third rail of Major League Baseball. And I know that it was getting weird because we've sort of institutionalized sports gambling and now it's legal and in fact, I think maybe the Tampa Bay Rays are sponsored by Bally's Sportsbook. That's all well and good. Gambling isn't equivalent to the steroids issue, and it's not equivalent to stealing signs in the sense that the rules at some point in time were pretty nebulous as to whether or not they were legal or not. You know, for the beginning of the steroid era, there was no policy, and we all know that the way that the policy for sign stealing in 2017 was handed down, it was handed down in a way in which MLB gave itself plenty of cover in case teams didn't comply. Gambling has been a no-no in Major League Baseball since the Black Sox, and there are signs in every clubhouse that that's a thing you do not do. And Pete Rose knew it when he did it. Wrongdoing that happened afterwards, and I'm telling you, you heard the same calls after McGwire and Bonds and Clemens and all those guys were found out about. And you hear the same calls now after the Astros in 2017. Just because other people have done things that were wrong doesn't mean that it somehow nullifies what he did and he gets into the Hall of Fame. The fact is one, he really has never been conciliatory about it at all. He has tried to apologize multiple times. And I think it's funny for people who don't want to listen to the Astros apologies after 2017, seem to bend over backwards to make more of an apology out of what Pete Rose has said than is there. You know, the other thing I think is you have the issue of, but he didn't bet on his own team to lose. The fact is that maybe it's well and good if you don't bet on a football team to lose. A football game happens once a week. Really, the days before, days after it don't impact it. In baseball, you're usually playing series. You're playing stretches of games in a row. How you manage before and after the game you bet on affects the outcomes of those games. How could it not? You might stretch a reliever or starting pitcher a little bit longer in a game you've bet on. You might use less capable guys the day before or the day after, and it therefore impacts the team in that way. So it's disingenuous to say, well, he never bet on his team to lose. The fact is, he bet on his team to play. Major League Baseball's Hall of Fame has a morality clause. Whether it should or shouldn't isn't really up for debate. It does. And I fully recognize that it could mean that some of the Astros I really like don't get into the Hall of Fame for what happened. It obviously stands to be seen if they're going to have the numbers to warrant it, but this might hang over their head. And for as much as I think it's disingenuous to say that the World Series doesn't count, I completely understand if people don't want to vote for Altuve or whoever into the Hall of Fame. I don't agree with it, but I can see it and understand it. So that's my take. Pete Rose, we should just put that to bed and kind of move on. But speaking of moving on, we have a really great show for you today, so stick with us.